Hello and good morning or afternoon, depending on the time in which you're tuning into this webinar. We at the British Chamber of Commerce very much hope you enjoy this presentation and benefit from the highly experienced speakers who are going to take you through a number of different interesting aspects of Singapore and the Chamber itself. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Ewan Milne and I'm a current fourth year business studies student at Edinburgh Napier University in Scotland. I've worked alongside all of the speakers who join me on this webinar, and I'm very pleased to also introduce them to you. Firstly, I'd like to introduce Alex Humphreys, who, like myself, is also a fourth year business studies student at Edinburgh Napier University. He has recently completed a placement with the British Chamber of Commerce out in Singapore as part of his university degree. Therefore, he has acted as a key link in creating this relationship between our university and the Chamber for this project. Within this webinar, Alex will take you through the role in which the Trade Service Department plays within the organisation. Secondly, I'd like to introduce David Kelly, who is the Executive Director of the British Chamber of Commerce Singapore, in which he is responsible for the strategy, growth and profile of the Chamber in supporting businesses and connecting opportunities with the UK and across the ASEAN region. Within this webinar, David will provide you with a rich insight into the organisation, further showcasing the fantastic opportunities which await you through a partnership or membership with the Chamber. Thirdly, I'm very pleased to introduce Ferris Chan, who is the Director of Business Development at Vistra Singapore. Ferris will discuss an overview of the market landscape using his vital 10 years of professional experience in the field of corporate turnaround, forensic accounting and financial advisory to provide you with a rich and highly analytical level of information. As we are all very aware, there's been a large amount of coverage of the UK leaving the European Union in January 2020. The shift of focus on growth opportunities in Asia is highly relevant. With the British Chamber of Commerce providing a platform supporting companies to grow, this webinar set out to demonstrate the potential support which VCs and clients could utilise and benefit from through the extensive network of the Chamber and across the wider ASEAN region. I would now like to hand over to our first speaker, Alex, who will take you through a brief insight into the Trade Services Department within the organisation.
Thanks, Ewan. So the Trade Services team provides advice and helps facilitate UK companies looking to export into Singapore and the wider region. Its main services are business matching, advisory services, and targeted events. The team uses a wide network base of the Chamber and close ties between the Singaporean and UK government to help deliver advice and solutions that are current and well measured. From global trade missions to small startup exports, the team has had experience dealing with a diverse range of clients and projects, allowing them to cater for businesses at any stage. But without further ado, I'll let David delve down deeper into how companies can effectively access opportunities in the region.
Thank you very much, Alex. Thank you very much, Ewan, for that fantastic introduction. It's very good to be here today and to share a little bit around what the British Chamber of Commerce is doing in Singapore and how we can support companies to grow. So without further ado, so I will talk from two perspectives to you today. One is with my hat running the British Chamber of Commerce here in Singapore, but also my second hat, which was my journey and how we utilised in my previous company, the Chamber, to support our growth aspirations across the Asia Pacific region more broadly, basing our Asia Pacific hub here in Singapore ourselves. So the first thing to really mention is that it's a really, really vibrant part of the world. There's been a lot of talk about Southeast Asia, Asia Pacific, ASEAN more broadly, you know, with the RCEP agreement that was signed a couple of weeks ago prior to this presentation, which contributes to sort of 15 countries with a trade deal looking at 30% of the global economy and 30% of the global population being represented in that group. It really is a very, very vibrant area to do business. And the British Chamber of Commerce of Singapore sits right at the heart of ASEAN. So its global its regional strategic hub and its place is a really great place to connect in terms of looking at opportunities around ASEAN. But around ASEAN, there are other very interesting countries as well. And there is a busier network, or a Britain in Southeast Asia network, which constitutes all of the chambers that you can see on the screen there that are really allow you to plug into economies around the region. And it's hugely rich, as I've told you. There's 650 million people represented in that region, so it's a big buying market there. And there is a very, very powerful network. So plugging into one of the chambers, whoever that might be in the ASEAN region, allows you to have opportunities to access other markets and other countries to grow. And really the power of this network, and not just the chamber here in Singapore, but the other chambers in the region, is to really support the hand-holding, the soft landing, the introductions to the local business ecosystems to help connect businesses that you might be looking to support and grow in this region more broadly. And this network meets very, very regularly, sort of every 2 weeks, to ensure that we are connected and we're helping to share best practice across the region to support companies that are looking to enter the market. So how do the chambers work, and how does the British Chamber of Commerce in Singapore work more broadly? Well, as Alex was mentioning right at the beginning of this presentation, we have a trade services team. But we've also got a very vibrant membership base as well, which I'll come on to later. We support the market entry of companies looking to expand into the region through our trade services team. And they tend to come through us directly from the UK network, from the British Chamber of Commerce network in the UK, representing the UK companies, or from the Department of International Trade through the International Trade Advisors as well. And we've started to see other investment companies that are invested in companies that they want to see grow also come through to the Chamber to support their growth in the region as well. So through the membership piece, we help sort of plug you into an already existent business ecosystem here. We provide support in terms of connections, and we help and nurture and support that growth, help plugging you into the right people to talk to, the right partners in the region, the access to funding and capital, etc. And try and provide that sort of soft landing to almost immediately plug you into the system here to help shortcut and potential growth challenges that some companies might have being on the other side of the world. And then we help that growth expansion going forward as well to really support UK companies in their growth agenda. And a lot of the chambers in the Britain and Southeast Asia network work very, very similarly in that approach, helping to soft land companies into that ecosystem. So what does it mean in terms of trade services offered? Well, Alex summarised some of the key elements, but really the three things that I've highlighted on the screen are sort of the main areas of support that we can provide. We can provide advisory services, so support in terms of doing business in Singapore, looking at the regulatory landscape, and supporting in terms of import and export throughout the country as well, general routes to market, which really sort of provides you with a good understanding of what it's like to do business here, and I'm sure we'll hear more of this from Ferris later in his presentation too. The second area is around business matching. So really helping to connect the companies that you've invested in to plug them into businesses here that are looking for meaningful partnerships and trying to help provide that opportunity to connect businesses together where there's an opportunity to present companies with each other for the opportunity for growth. And then finally, through targeted events, whether that's through product launches, whether that's through networking events, whether it's through general presentations to get your product, your brand, or your service out to the market, we can support through that piece as well. Now, my journey was very, very similar to this in my previous role in the maritime space, where we utilised the advisory services to try and understand the market more broadly in the marine space, Singapore being a huge maritime hub more broadly, but also the business matching. And what the Chamber did for us as a business was it allowed us to not just fly over to the other side of the world in a pre-COVID time, in a business suit to meet people and take a lot of business cards back, but actually to make meaningful relationships prior to that journey, so that we weren't just being parachuted in as an organization. We already had an infrastructure that was available there for us. So it made that relationship building much easier and much better. And then we got involved involved with the Chamber through the membership network as well to ensure that our brand presence was being raised. And all of that support really helped our growth across Asia Pacific, as the Chamber then helped to plug me as a small business exploring the market and being fairly new to the market to get across the region as well. So this really does work. And this is something that the Chamber is incredibly passionate about. So a little bit about the Chamber of Commerce in Singapore. We have just under 4,000 individual members as part of the Chamber, and really our purpose, like all the chambers in the region, are to help build those networks for companies, to help connect businesses together, and to find opportunities of business growth, of business partnership to help companies to grow. So we really are a genuine Chamber of Commerce, and it is all about doing business, and that infrastructure and that ecosystem that is here is very important, and it's very, very powerful too. So a little bit about Singapore, and I won't go into too much detail, but it is only the size of Anglesey. And we must remember that, because there's only 5.6 million people here. So in terms of the consumer market, it's relatively small depending on the products and services that you're looking to bring here. But it is the second easiest place to do business in the world. And that does make it very easy to set up a company, which we'll hear from Ferris on later. But also the connectivity of where Singapore is geographically placed in ASEAN really makes it the regional hub. So we see lots of companies set up their regional HQs or even their global HQs in Singapore, as it gives access to a much wider population, that's 650 million people around the ASEAN region more broadly. And of course, and not forgetting Australia, and Perth is only a 4.5-hour flight away from Singapore as well. So it's not a huge step into Australasia also. So there are lots and lots of benefits of Singapore as a market to set up. And the other thing that Singapore really provides a great opportunity for businesses that are looking to expand is a very well educated workforce, which makes things very easy. English is also the first spoken language, so it does make communicating, doing business, setting your business up, making connections, and helping you with that regional growth a great place to set up your regional hub or look to expand your business to overseas. So in terms of sectors, we're seeing lots of activity around tech. Tech is massive here in Singapore, and there is a fintech bridge between the UK and Singapore, for example. So certainly the financial services space, the fintech space, really, really important. Food and drink, there's a lot of agri-tech, food tech going on. There's a huge campaign in Singapore at the moment around trying to curate 30% of food here in Singapore. So lots of opportunities for tech businesses in the food space. Health tech is incredibly important also, in life sciences. It is the global hub for marine. It's the largest bunkering port in the world. So in terms of trade coming through Singapore, it's very, very important. So it's a very interesting country to expand into. And just highlighting some of those sectors on the screen, the ones that we've highlighted in red are the ones where we as a British Chamber of Commerce have business committees. So automatically we can plug you into an ecosystem that already exists in those sectors within the country. And the other thing to really highlight about Singapore and some of the sectors is that Singapore's brilliant at telling you where it wants to get to. And it has, through the Ministry of Trade and Industry, written 23 industry transformational roadmaps, which really tells you the journey of where they want to get to. So it's getting involved with the likes of the Economic Development Board and Enterprise Singapore and the MTI is a really, really important process here in terms of really getting involved in those ecosystems and trying to help drive Singapore's agenda too. So lots of opportunity here. So what do you do, and where is the advice available? Well, on our website, we've created a trade portal, and this is a one-stop shop for businesses under our Future of Trade theme to allow companies to find out how to set up their company, and we can put you in touch with people like Ferris, looking for business partners, looking for sort of capital funding, where the opportunities are, and providing us with a bit of information on your export readiness to make sure that we can try and help support your growth journey in this part of the world as well. And that's all available on our website through the link that's highlighted on the screen. So please do reach out to us. We have a great network of partners like Vistra, like Lloyds Bank, who help support this activity that we can really help drive business growth and the export of UK products and services in Singapore and the wider region as well. So in a pre-COVID world, this would be a typical type of event that we would run. This is in food and drink, so quite tangible in terms of a product. But we would hold these sort of events where we can get buyers in to meet the product sellers, to meet the companies, to meet the brands, to taste them, and to really get that interaction going and make sure that we're getting you in front of the right people at the moment. And sort of post-COVID world, where we can't travel and see each other and we can't meet face to face as easily, a lot of that has gone online. So over the last 4 weeks, we've run 3 virtual trade missions in 3 different sectors, and helping to support companies to connect with the right market and the right opportunities here in Singapore. And we're doing a lot more of these. So just like this webinar, we're providing content for UK companies to help demystify some of the challenges of selling your products and services into the ASEAN region. So over the last 3 years, we've helped about 1,000 businesses through the Chamber Network directly, whether that's been through signposting, a bit of advice, helping to connect to businesses, and helping to get them set up, and supporting with the likes of employment passes and passes that you require here to be able to operate. And so all of the stuff that I've been talking about in the presentation has culminated in supporting around about 1,000 companies. So we're quite an active chamber in terms of supporting the export journey of companies. So with that, I will hand over to Ferris, who can go into a lot more detail around what it's like to operate here in Singapore. But my final comment is that, we are here to help. Please do reach out to us. We can provide some support on the ground, and the Chamber Network more broadly in the region is a fantastic resource for companies to use, with people that are operating in that country that have got great market expertise that can help you to fast track and navigate the opportunities that are available that present themselves to the market. So I hope that was helpful, and very much look forward to Ferris's presentation. So Ferris, over to you.
Thank you. A very good afternoon and good morning to our fellow guests. Thank you for coming up on this webinar. And today, my name is Ferris. I'm from Vistra, and today we're covering on setting up and doing business in Singapore, and also an introduction for venture capital. Maybe some of you may not have known where I was from. Basically, shall run you through some information on Vistra and what do we do. So basically, Vistra is a leading provider of expert advisory and administrative support to funds, corporate, capital clients, and private wealth clients. We are among the top 3 corporate and trust service providers globally. Our capabilities span from international incorporation to trust, fiduciary, private client services, and fund administration. We employ over 4,600 professionals across 45 jurisdictions throughout the Americas, Europe, Middle East, and Asia Pacific. Through our deep understanding of risk and opportunity, we deliver the confidence and also the security of our clients, and where the market needs to also seize the world of opportunities for them. Today, for the agenda, we'll be touching on a few points. Singapore at a glance, Singapore as a venture capital destinations, structures available for venture capital funds in Singapore, what is a VCC, in short, a variable capital company, and why do you use a variable capital company structure in Singapore, and what would then be the tax treatment and tax benefit for having a variable capital company in Singapore. Well, Singapore at a glance. Singapore, although a tiny dot on the global map, is known for many ones and twos. We are actually ranked first as being the world's most competitive economy, the world's freest economy, talent competitiveness in Asia Pacific, digital competitiveness, and also in order and security. As also what David has shared earlier, we also rank 2nd in the world for ease of doing business globally. So what makes Singapore as a venture capital destination? So Singapore is highly regarded as a sound legal and regulatory jurisdiction, anchored with a stable political and economic environment. Just earlier in mid of this year, we had just had an election, and it was a peaceful election, unlike what you have experienced or you've heard in some of the parts of the world. Most recently, Singapore also signed the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership that involved 15 countries in the APEC region. And this is actually the world's largest free trade agreement in terms of the GDP. So What would then be the structures available for venture capital funds in Singapore? For a start, we know the traditional will be the unit trust structures, the limited and general partnership structures, the private limited company structures, and right now I'd like to introduce to you the variable capital company structures. This is the new structure that is developed by the Monetary Authority of Singapore to enhance the funds industry in Singapore itself. So what is the VCC in short? It's actually legislated on 15th of January 2020, and this then the Singapore Variable Capital Company legislative represent the city-state's latest investment fund innovation. So as we have just shared earlier, this is actually a new corporate structures, and what it does is that there's diversity in terms of the strategy, and it's able to be applicable to funds across traditional as well as alternative investments. So it can be also used for open-ended or closed-ended funds itself. Another benefit is that it has also the characteristic is that it is having the benefit flexibility in setting up as well, where the fund managers can also incorporate new VCC. Plus, they can also re-domicile existing funds with comparable structures in Singapore as a VCC. And one of it is that it is also adaptable structure, whereby it can stand as a standalone entity or also under umbrella structures with multiple sub-funds. If several funds are grouped within a single corporate entity, they are also ring-fenced from each other. One of that is there's also multiple benefits which I touched on earlier, and that it actually creates investments flexibility and also enhance tax and operation efficiency as well. So what is a variable capital company? On the fundamental, the VCC can be used as a vehicle for both traditional funds as well as alternative funds, such as private funds, hedge funds, private equity, real estates, as well as infrastructure funds. The share capital of a VCC will always be equal to the net asset value of the VCC. The performance of the VCC investment shall be measured and evaluated on a fair value basis. And this is something very different as you will see if you're looking at a private limited company structure. For the fund manager, a VCC cannot be self-managed. It must be managed by a fund management company that's duly registered or licensed by the Monetary Authority of Singapore, MES in short, under the Singapore Security and Futures Acts, SFA. For the regulatory authorities, it's actually governed by the Variable Capital Company Act. It's regulated by the Accounting and Corporate Regulatory Authorities for establishment as well as for administrative purposes. It's regulated by MES again for anti-fraud purpose. It's regulated by the SFA for all investment funds related activities. So as we just shared earlier, on the fund structure, it can also be a standalone fund or it can be an umbrella entity with multiple sub-funds. In the case of multiple sub-funds, there's also a segregation of assets and liability from each sub-funds. And multiple sub-funds must have the same fund manager for all the sub-funds, and the sub-funds of a VCC may invest in another sub-funds of the same VCC. And on the structure legality of the VCC, it itself is actually based on a limited liability structure. Under the VCC Act, each sub-funds are not distinct legal entity, but the sub-funds will be issued a sub-fund identification number when registered with ACRA. The sub-fund assets and liability are actually ring-fenced by the VCC Act when each sub-fund's assets and liabilities may only be allocated to and used to discharge the liability of that sub-funds and cannot be used to discharge any liability of the umbrella VCC or any other sub-funds of the VCC. With regards to income tax, for income tax purpose, the VCC will be treated as a company and a single entity. For the umbrella VCC, tax resident will be determined at the umbrella level, and a single corporate income tax can be filed with the Inland Revenue Authority of Singapore for the entire umbrella fund structures, including all its sub-funds. The computation of chargeable income for an umbrella VCC, the tax deduction and allowance will be applied at the sub-fund level, and the resulting chargeable income of each sub-funds will then be consolidated at the total chargeable income of the umbrella VCC. It uses the same corporate rate of 17% and is subject to partial exemption on the first 200,000 of chargeable income, which means your effective tax rate will be definitely be lower than 17% itself. So why would venture capital be looking at a variable capital company for your setting up your funds for investments? One of the benefits of using VCC structures over other existing structures is that It enjoys the flexibility in the distribution and returns of its capital, as a VCC will be permitted to freely redeem shares and pay dividends using its net assets or capital. Unlike in normal corporate structures, that can only be done out from the profit that you earn by the company. Number two, mitigating the risk that the creditor of poorly performing or insolvent sub-funds will reach into the assets of other sub-funds within the same umbrella funds. This actually helps to ensure that your sub-funds are independently protected by credit against creditors should one sub-funds perform poorly. And this would not affect the whole portfolio under the VCC. The umbrella VCC structure is more cost-effective compared to standalone funds since the administrative functions within the umbrella VCC can be consolidated, which means that, for example, if you are looking at a traditional fund structures and having multiple funds, you will need to have incur administrative costs for every fund that you have set up. But under VCC structures, the administrative cost will be based on only the VCC itself, and the cost will be shared among the sub-funds. And what would then be the potential use of the VCC? It's basically the mainstream alternative investment strategy, as we shared earlier, for either open or closed-ended, or for retail and institutional strategies. And it's actually a pooling investing vehicle to replace multi-layered fund structures. One of the key features and requirements of the VCCs is that they must have a Singapore-based license or MAS regulated fund manager, a registered office in Singapore, and a locally based company secretary. This actually enables them to also enjoy tax benefit when they meet this criteria as well. Secondly, the capital must be equal to net assets value, enabling flexibility in how it is distributed. They are not subjected to capital maintenance requirements and enable investors to exit when they want to. And the uniqueness of the VCC is that they can pay dividends out of capital. As I just mentioned, unlike a normal company, it's normally out of the profits. And this actually allows them to meet investors' requirement for periodic returns. Do note that they need to register a sub-funds within 7 days of formation via a separate name and a registration number for each one. And a sub-fund must have a VCC at the end of its name. They should also file annual returns after the AGM and within 7 months after the end of the financial year end. And this is very similar to what you have in the private limited company for the compliance. Next is that they can also avoid the needs to hold an AGM if the directors give at least 60 days written notice to the members. And they must be audited by a Singapore-based auditor and present financial statements as per International Financial Reporting Standard, IFRS, or the Singapore Financial Reporting Standards, SFRS, or the US General Accepted Accounting Principle, where in short, the US GAAP. One thing to note is that they are not required to make their financial statement or shareholder register public, which actually gives this structure privacy. And they must adhere to requirements relating to anti-money laundering and countering the financing of terrorism. So what would then be the incentive of setting up a VCC in Singapore? Well, on the fund structure, MAS has launched a VCC grant scheme where the financial sector development funds will co-fund up to 70% of eligible expenses paid to Singapore-based service provider. This is capped at 150,000 per application and 3 VCC per fund manager. A Singapore resident fund managed by a Singapore-based fund manager will also be exempted from tax on specific income derived from designated investment. As for the fund manager, it enjoys a concessionary tax rate of 10% for fund management and investment advisory activities. However, this is subject to certain conditions to be met. Next, we touch on the tax treatment and the tax benefit of having a variable capital company structure. Firstly, tax exemption for the life of the VCC funds, and this is up to a total tenure of 15 years. Secondly is that the VCC can claim GST incurred on their expenses, and it also grants safe harbor exemptions, which means that you were able to extend and refund upfront certainty of non-taxation of companies' gains on disposal of ordinary shares within the VCC. Fourth, we are able to extend, enhance, and refunding tax incentive. And on the fifth advantage is that there's also withholding tax exemption on interest payments available to approved funds. And lastly, as what David also shared, Singapore being a country with extensive treaty network, you can use VCC as a platform for your investments into using the VCC as your investment vehicle when you invest into Asia Pacific and to really capitalize on Singapore's extensive tax treaty in the region. I've come to the end of my presentation, and would you have any questions? And I'm be happy to answer or to address it for you.
Thank you so much indeed, Ferris. We've had a couple of questions that have come through. That was really good. The first one is, where do you see the industry moving forward in terms of jurisdiction preference? You talked about some of the things around the MAS in your presentation, but where do you see the industry moving forward in terms of that area?
Well, I mean, apart from being in Singapore, based in Singapore, as I understand, I would definitely promote Singapore. But I mean, more so for a practical reason, and we understand that is that with the increased scrutiny of offshore jurisdictions such as Cayman and BVI, really, I mean, we do see a lot of investors having Singapore as a preferred jurisdiction for setting up their funds. One of the reasons is because offshore jurisdiction actually increasingly subject to substance rules and regulations. For example, the Cayman Island has just proposed a new private fund bills in 2020, and this is to require registration for private investment funds. And this is also where it also got itself out of the blacklist by OECD. And I think with that, the Monetary Authority of Singapore has also researched and combined the best in class of various jurisdiction structures in them for developing the VCC structure itself. And we have and based on my presentation, we have also seen the advantage of VCC, and more importantly, that you also provide cost efficiency as compared to standalone funds, since the administration function and cost can be consolidated under the VCC structure itself.
Oh, great stuff. We've been talking a lot about sort of the VC and the fund side here, but what about investment? Is there a trend that you're seeing in terms of governance on investments here?
Okay, David, yes, it's a good question, because based on what we experienced recently, even on not on a fund level, we've been engaged by a lot of VC funds or investment company to look into their investment vehicle or to their investees. Take for example, I shall maybe share with you on a case study. In recent years, we have also been helping a UK-based VC company, and one of my in this particular company, they have made their investment into India using a fund in Singapore, and somehow, I mean, what we did is that we got arranged to be appointed as the independent accountant for their investment in this company in India. And during our I would say tenure as a bookkeeper and independent accountant, we realized many occasions there was cash burns based on on the financial statements, and this is something that we what we call puzzled or worried, because it doesn't seem to gel with the growth of the investment at the same time. So what we did is we actually did a whistleblow or highlight this to the venture company. And with that, the venture company actually proceed to investigate and then to have it rectified. I think from that onwards, I think Vistra has also managed to build on this relationship with the VC company. And we have also continued to help them to protect and safeguard their investments, even from a non-fund approach itself.
Fantastic. And a bit of a silly question for you, Ferris, but are there any restrictions in terms of sort of employment passes and applications for employment passes for funds that are looking to set up in Singapore? Are there any sort of hurdles that VCs and sort of need to look at in terms of the employment or the moving of some of their talent from somewhere else in the world?
I would say that if you're looking at setting up a fund in Singapore, so long as we can justify the reason of the employment, whereby you are here to run the fund, I think that's pretty reasonable, and it's something that we are able to help to make the application for the employment pass for the individual to be working in Singapore and to run out the fund itself. But bear in mind also that in Singapore, we also do have incentive for companies to set up funds either using the 13X or 13R structure, which I've not shared in this meeting on these presentations, that whereby they actually facilitate also a platform for the funds itself to be able to have what you call a red carpet with regards to their employment pass application.
Right stuff. And it's just one final question that we've got here, which is, for funds that sort of might not want to set up in Singapore, but their clients are, or their investments are in the UK, and they might want to help the growth of their investments to move to Singapore, to help them to expand across the region. Are there any sort of general hurdles that, or sort of a couple of sort of key sort of takeaways for companies when they're looking at setting up their business in Singapore?
I guess foremost is we need to realize, foremost is also on the business plan. Just take, for example, in the recent, I think just last week, we also have inquiry from our colleagues from UK, whereby we do have a company in UK intend to set up in Singapore. However, for this individual, they intend to hire an individual in Singapore, but without initially having the thought of having a Singapore entity to run the operation in Singapore. So of course, with that, this individual, what we did is we also checked with the companies what would be the role of this individual working in Singapore on the behalf of the company. And when we realized it is a sales development nature as a regional business development individual, we raised a red flag to them, saying that is a no-go actually for them to do that or work in such a structure, especially in Singapore. So with that, we actually reviewed that and we encouraged them to actually set up a structure entity in Singapore, and with that, hire the headcount under the Singapore entity, and this will actually help to resolve their payroll and human resource compliance. In addition, using Singapore as a vehicle to also invest into the region or to acquire clients in the region, also benefits them from tax perspective. So I guess with that, they kind of understand, the benefit of speaking to companies like Vistra itself, whereby they are able to be well advised in terms of their intent to enter into business or expand into Singapore. So this is one example. Yeah.
Great stuff. And I've got to ask the cheeky question to you. So for VCs that have invested in brands in the UK or the startup scene in the UK, is it really that easy to set up a company in Singapore if you're a UK company?
Yes, it is. In fact, Singapore, as we have all shared, also just both you and me, we are ranked number 2 in the world of setting up and doing business as a country. So even let's say should the funds intend to re-domicile itself from UK into Singapore, it's quite simple as well. Correct.
Great stuff. Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Ferris. It was really, really fascinating presentation, and I'm going to hand over to Ewan now. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, David.
Perfect. Thank you very much, David, for those questions and also those incredibly interesting answers, Ferris. I'd just like to obviously round up this webinar and say, on behalf of Alex, David, Ferris, and myself, we'd very much like to thank you for your time in listening to this webinar and hope you've found this interesting and insightful in understanding the incredible opportunities which are available not only to you, but your clients. Should you be interested in further exploring this fantastic relationship with the British Chamber of Commerce in Singapore, you can access contact details at the bottom of the microsite which you use to access this. We at the Chamber very much look forward to hearing from you and working alongside you to support your unprecedented growth across the ASEAN region. Thank you very much.